Guess what arrived? All right, guys, so I got my order of seed potatoes in. Finally! Let me put this away before I hurt myself. And no, this Band-Aid is not from hurting myself with a knife. Well, it is, but it was in the kitchen. It wasn't right now. So these seed potatoes I got from Keen Garlic. The company I ordered potatoes from last time was Haas Tools, and they performed beautifully. I'm sure these will perform beautifully as well. I've ordered from Keen Garlic before. They're a great company. So today we are going to be taking these out of the bag and what's called chitting them, and we're gonna have a little potato talk while I work. So seed potatoes aren't actually like little seeds, like little potato seeds. Potatoes are grown from the old tubers, and this is an old kitchen potato that just sprouted. And if you were to cut all of these sprouts into separate chunks, you would have that many plants. So about 3. This is a big old chunk right here. Potato tubers actually become the seed itself, which you plant for the next year. And there are tons of reputable companies that sell certified seed potatoes, organic seed potatoes. What a certification means, like a certified seed potato, is potatoes are really susceptible to diseases. And so while you may grow a crop of potatoes one year and then use those the leftover potatoes next year to grow more, they don't really recommend using generation after generation after generation of potatoes because of their disease susceptibility. So buying certified seed potatoes just means that you are buying potatoes from a place that gets their potatoes certified disease-free. So you want to ensure that you have the best possible seeds for your crop, just like you would any other seed that you get. So, let me grab my knife. So what chitting potatoes is, you're gonna be cutting all of the eyes of the potatoes. Like this eye, this is an eye that has sprouted. These are eyes that have sprouted. If you cook with potatoes, you commonly cut the eyes off. You're just gonna be cutting these potatoes up into smaller pieces that have 1 or 2 eyes on them. Now you can absolutely plant this whole potato in the ground. It really is personal preference depending on how you want your end product to come out. So if you chit these into several pieces, you will have several potato plants that will, in theory, grow bigger potatoes. Now, if you just plant this one potato in the ground, it's going to have several sprouts come up from the same spot. And it will be fine, but the potatoes that you get underneath the plant are just gonna be smaller than they would if you just separated out the sprouts, because there's just not that much room. So it really is personal preference. If you like super baby potatoes, then planting a whole thing might be more your style. I personally like to have as many plants as possible, so I always chit my potatoes. And we'll get to the reasons why in a second. Let me write this down. So one potato that I have is the Corolla potato, and the other one is the dark red Norland. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking the old box that had the potatoes in it, and I'm gonna have 2 separate boxes for each potato variety. The reason I have these cardboard boxes, I mean, I could use something fancier if I had it, I don't. But when you're cutting up potatoes raw, they tend to get a little juicy. And what we're gonna be doing is cutting all these potatoes into pieces and then laying them out to dry. So the old cardboard box that came in proves really useful in situations like this. You know what I just found out? This is a sticker. I don't need my Sharpie, I can just stick what potato I'm gonna put on each box. How convenient is that? The reason for chitting is to break up your sprouts into multiple plants. And when you chit, you wanna do it a couple days or a week or so before you actually plant your potatoes in the ground. And the reason for that is that you want that fresh part of the potato that you just cut to kind of harden and scab over, which you know potatoes do if they're exposed to the air, if you've ever had a stale potato with a cut on it on your counter. So when you chit, you want to find the sprouts or the eyes on the potato and then cut your pieces of potato about, you can leave 1 sprout per, but I like to leave 2 or 3 sprouts per. The reason for that, it just gives you a better chance. It's kind of like if you were, you know, putting seeds in a pot to sprout, you don't usually just put 1 seed, you're gonna put 2 or 3 to make sure something comes up in that pot. That's the same way with this potato. If I see 2 eyes on here, I'm not going to just leave 1 eye on each piece and then plant that, because I might not have 1 plant come up. But if I have 2 per eye, there's a higher likelihood that I will get a plant coming out of the ground with that. So what you wanna do is cut around in this potato and just separate each piece with about 2 eyes on it. It doesn't have to be pretty. It can totally be messy. So here's 1 piece with 2 eyes on it, and this open spot, this is the part you need to scab over. So these potatoes, as I chit them, are going to be placed on the cardboard and let air dry for about a week until this becomes hard and scabbed over and not wet. Now the reason you want to let them scab over and dry out is because putting this wet potato in the ground really opens it up to a lot of disease and pest pressure. So just allowing this time to dry out will increase your chances of it having a successful sprout when it goes in the ground. So it's actually kind of hard to find the eyes in here. There's 1, and there's 1. So let's cut this off. We'll go around like that. There's a piece. And if I'm being honest, I really can't find any other sprouts on here, honestly, besides that one. So I'll just cut this straight down the middle and we'll see. This just looks like the blossom end. I don't think that's a sprout. That might be a sprout, that might be an eye. This is a couple eyes. And if you have like a small potato, this is a good sized potato. But if you had like a really small one that only had a couple sprouts on it, just plant the whole thing. It'll be okay. You'll still get potatoes. You'll just get yummy baby ear potatoes. And these don't have to be cut in like a specific geometric pattern. As you saw, I have all different shapes and sizes. The main thing is that you have at least 2 eyes or 2 sprouts per potato chunk, and that you are allowing them time to dry out and scab over before you put them in the ground. On these ones. I've never ordered this variety of potato before. This is a Corolla potato and it's supposed to be a good storage variety. which I didn't purchase a storage variety last year, and they didn't last very long in my closet. We had to eat them pretty quickly before they started sprouting. But to be fair, they also underwent a lot of stress because I didn't have the shade cloth over them last year, and they did not like the April heat. They survived though, and it was definitely over 95 degrees. But now that I have the shade cloth in the garden this year, I am so excited. It's gonna be an awesome potato year, guys. Maybe. I haven't had great luck in the garden thus far, but it's kind of making me hungry. So this Corolla is a mid to late season variety, and there are 3 different types of seasonal varieties of potatoes you can get. Early season, mid-season, or late season. Since potatoes are cool weather crops, if you live in a place like here in the desert where the spring is almost non-existent and it becomes summer immediately, you want to strive for those shorter season varieties that are going to mature very quickly. Now, most of those short season varieties do. A lot of the short season varieties I found though, when looking around on seed potato websites and stuff like that, is they don't have a lot of storage capabilities. So the long storing varieties, if you think of growing potatoes and keeping them in your basement all winter long and just having a store of potatoes to use, I haven't found a lot of short season varieties that are really good for that purpose, which is a bummer. Of course, you should always grow based on your climate and things like that. But I did try this Corolla this year, which is a mid to late season. The dark red Norland is an early season. It's a great potato. I've grown it before. I've grown another a Viking potato from Haas Tools last year was a red variety I've grown as well, which was excellent. They just don't keep very long in storage. So I wanted to see how this late season variety was gonna do. The only issue with growing a late season potato here in the desert is that they take longer to mature. So what I'm gonna be battling with these late season potatoes is the heat and keeping them healthy and producing in the heat. Now, if the temperatures get too high, like just for them to basically live, they'll just die. And there's not a whole lot I can do about that. I'm not gonna go and put a fan and misters outside in my garden. But even if they suffer a little, I'm sure they will still produce potatoes. They just might be on the smaller side because the plants struggled and didn't send as much energy into their tubers, or they just won't have good storage capabilities as they're supposed to. Potatoes are a bit like the same as onions and garlic in that if the plants undergo a significant amount of stress while they're growing or during basically any part of their life process, the storage capacity of the actual food that you harvest from it can be reduced. So those onions that I have in the garden that have been through all the way to the bad place and back, they may not, I'm hoping they still produce bulbs, and they may not produce bulbs at all, but they just also may not be very good storing bulbs. So I'll just have to eat them quicker, which is fine. It's still a harvest. And there are multiple ways to preserve onions and potatoes and garlic. So you see, out of like 5 or 6 potatoes that were in that bag, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Potentially 25 potato plants from which to get potatoes from. Super cool. And now, onto the red Norlands. Now I'm not gonna go over planting potatoes today. I'll actually do that with you guys in, I don't know, within the next week whenever I get out to plant these. But potatoes can be planted, and honestly, they encourage you to plant them about 2 weeks before your last frost. Potatoes are cold hardy. Now you don't want to freeze these. If you freeze these, they will be mush and will not sprout at all. So you do not want your potato seed to freeze. But when you plant potato seed, when you plant this little guy in the ground, he's gonna go several inches deep, between 4 and 8 inches deep. Depending on where you look online, you can plant them 2 inches deep, 8 inches deep. I tend to err on the deeper side because I do plant my potatoes so early. Last year I planted them the first week of March, and I had 6 weeks before my last frost then. So I wanted to make sure they were well covered, well insulated, and I had a heavy layer of straw mulch over the dirt where I'd planted them deeply already. Now my ground doesn't freeze here, like ever. If your ground does freeze, that is something to take into account because you do not want these potatoes to get frozen. But I'll be planting these well ahead of my last frost just to give them a good head start. So potatoes are obviously, you plant these deep and they're going to send up these little guys for quite a while until they find sunshine. And I even had some potatoes last year, their greenery came out above the ground, but they were so encapsulated by straw mulch that they didn't suffer at all. Like I said, the plants themselves can take it down to about 28 degrees. And then further than that, it's also dependent on how long they were in that cold temperature. So at night, if it gets down to 28 just for like a quick hour and then it comes back up again, they'll be fine. But if you have 28 degrees sustained for 10 hours one night, then they're gonna suffer. So I'll be planting these with you guys probably within the next week, and then I'll be putting a gracious layer of mulch over them. Although I don't know what mulch I'm using yet. I had some excellent feedback from you guys on my last video where all my experiments died. They haven't gotten any better. The yarrow is still alive in all 3 beds, but it's just been getting too cold that the rutabaga and the cabbage petered out. So I don't think I'll be replanting just yet. We've got cold in the forecast this week, pretty cold. But these potatoes won't have a problem going in. I'll be planting them very deep with lots of mulch. Oh, I was talking about the feedback I got from you guys in the last video. And someone suggested pine needles, which I have used in the past, and I can't believe I didn't think of it. Oh my goodness. You want to say hi to everybody? Say the hi. Oh, look out, girls. Okay. Let me let her out. Hold on. And with pine needles, in the past, I've mixed them with straw, and it kind of, because they don't blow away, they just mat, which can be a problem depending on what plants you use them around. But if you like mix it with the straw, it provides both a movable and immovable mulch. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. So I've got to go forage for some pine needles because I don't have any trees on my property, much less pine trees. But they're everywhere here, so it shouldn't be an issue. And I think what I'm gonna do is just do that. Just use pine straw or pine needles as my mulch. So let me finish these up because I'm just talking and not cut. I'm gonna cut my finger off is what I'm gonna do. So I have substantially more pieces of the dark red Nolan than of the Corolla. That was over here. But that's because these were larger and they didn't have as many eyes. And these had tons of eyes and they were tiny. And I had more potatoes in this bag because they were smaller. I've also got 2 of these red potatoes, unknown variety from the store. They are not organic. And you can absolutely plant potatoes that you buy from the store. I've done it before and I'm going to do it again this year. They do often spray a sprout inhibitor on these potatoes, which obviously doesn't prevent it from sprouting, although it does delay it a little bit. but what it can do is, because it's a bit of a diluted herbicide, is it can just affect the growth of the potato plant in general over time. I didn't notice anything different last year because, well, my potatoes weren't in great shape without the shade cloth. Anyways, although I still got production, I didn't really notice a huge difference. What I did notice a huge difference in was between the Yukon Gold potatoes that I got from Tractor Supply and the certified seed potatoes I ordered from Haas Tools. Massive difference in the health of my plants between those two. Not saying that those seed potatoes from Tractor Supply were bad. They were certified seed potatoes. They just have a bit rougher handling. They probably aren't stored ideally. And then of course they're sitting in a bag on a Tractor Supply shelf for months. I got them at the end of February. They'd been sitting there for a full month. Contrary to certified seed potatoes, which are in a very controlled environment by people who do this for a living and then shipped out directly from wherever they keep them, stored all winter. So it's just a higher quality. You pay more, obviously, but it is a higher quality seed potato, which usually leads to higher quality plants. I've got these guys, so some russet potatoes I'm gonna try. Russet potatoes are a late season potato, I do know that. Nonetheless, I'm gonna plant them anyways because why not? So I have 2 of these red ones and 2 russets I'm gonna cut up right now. And there aren't any roots like inside of this potato when I cut it open. There's not gonna be roots from these sprouts or anything, which is why you don't really have to be too careful or cut them a certain way. The sprout's just coming up out of the potato itself. Focus. The sprout's just coming up out of the potato itself, and it will use this meat as energy to get to the sunlight. But you don't need to worry about how close you cut it. Obviously don't cut the sprout off. Don't cut as far away from the sprout as you can, but this will be just fine, just like that. Because there's not really any other good eyes besides this one on here. So I'm gonna have to cut these guys individually. And then I'll probably cut this bad spot away just because I don't need it molding or anything. So I'll just cut that off. There's no sprouts over here anyways. There's one right there, and I'll just cut it like that. I'm probably gonna get rid of this eye that's right next to the bad spot too. Ta-da! Ooh. All right, we got him. 4 potatoes out of that one, hopefully. This one has a bunch more eyes. That'll be good. Just leave that piece whole. All right, and we are done. So let me take these into the grow room and I'll show you guys how you want to set them up to get them ready for scabbing and sprouting before we plant. So here I am in my grow room slash Vivian's bedroom. And what you want to do when you are preparing your potatoes, your chitted potatoes for planting, is you want to leave them in an area that has light and air circulation. And you want it to be moderately warm, between 60 and 70 degrees. Now I keep my house pretty cold, but this room is right next to a south-facing window. So it's plenty of warm and it's gonna get light. This will allow the potatoes to scab over and begin their sprouting process so that you have a bit of a head start when you put them in the ground. And here we are. The potatoes will be fine here. I might bring these top shades down so they don't get hit by direct light. But other than that, they'll dry out just fine. They'll be ready to plant within the week, and I am very excited. This is way more potatoes than I had last year. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing YouTube regularly then, so I don't have any log of it. But I'm very excited this year to see what we get. So that's it, guys. That is chitting potatoes. I will link Keen Garlic's website down below. Great company. They even send you a little spring products planting instructions, which has instructions on onions, potatoes, asparagus, horseradish, and obviously garlic. The name is Keen Garlic Company. So, as I said before, chitting potatoes is completely personal preference. You can absolutely plant whole potatoes in the ground. That is totally doable, totally fine. But if you do want to chit your potatoes, I hope this was helpful to you, and I will catch you on the next one.